Letter of the Holy Father Francis on the renewal of the study of Church history. Dear brothers and sisters, in the present letter, I would like to share some thoughts on the importance of the study of Church history, particularly in order to help priests better interpret the world in which we live. This is a question that I would like to see taken into consideration in the training of new priests and others engaged in pastoral work. I am well aware that in the formation of candidates for the priesthood, a good deal of attention is devoted to the study of church history, as is only right and proper. What I would like to emphasize here is the importance of developing a genuine sense of history in young students of theology. By this, I mean not only a solid and detailed knowledge of major events in the past 20 centuries of Christianity, but also and above all, the cultivation of a clear sense of the historical dimension that is ours as human beings. No one can truly know their deepest identity or what they wish to be in the future without attending to the bonds that link them to preceding generations. This is true not only of us as individuals, but also as a community. Indeed, the study and writing of history helps to keep the flame of collective conscience alive. Otherwise, all that remains is the personal memory of facts bound to our own interests or sensibilities, with no real connection to the human and ecclesial community in which we live. A proper sense of history can help each of us to develop a better sense of proportion and perspective in coming to understand reality as it is and not as we imagine it or would prefer reality to be. Setting aside dangerous and disembodied abstractions, we are able to relate to reality as it summons us to ethical responsibility, sharing, and solidarity. According to an oral tradition whose written source I can confirm, a great French theologian used to tell his students that the study of history protects us from ecclesiological monophysitism. That is, from an overly angelic conception of the church, presenting a church that is unreal because she lacks spots and wrinkles. Indeed, the church, like our own mothers, must be loved as she is. Otherwise, we do not love her at all, or what we love is only a figment of our imagination. Church history helps us to see the real church and to love the church as she truly exists, and love what she has learned and continues to learn from her mistakes and failures. A church that even in her darkest moments is conscious of her deepest identity can be capable of understanding the imperfect and wounded world in which she lives. In her efforts to bring healing and renewal to the world, she will use the same means by which she strives to heal and renew herself, even if she at times does not succeed. This can serve as a corrective to the misguided approach that would view reality only from a triumphalist defense of our function or role. As I pointed out in the encyclical letter Fratelli Tutti, that is precisely the approach that sees the injured man in the parable of the Good Samaritan as a distraction irrelevant to the important things in life, a nobody. The need to cultivate a sense of history in candidates for the priesthood should appear obvious, and even more so in our time, when there is a growing loss of the sense of history, which leads to further breakup. A kind of deconstructionism, whereby human freedom claims to create everything, starting from zero, is making headway in today's culture. The one thing it leaves in its wake is to drive to limitless consumption and expressions of empty individualism. The importance of a connection to history. More generally, it must be said that all of us, not just candidates for the priesthood, need a renewed sense of history. In this context, I have made the following observation. If someone tells young people to ignore their history, to reject the experiences of their elders, to look down on the past, and to look forward to a future that he holds out, doesn't it then become easy to draw them along so that they only do what he tells them? He needs the young to be shallow, uprooted, and distrustful, so that they can trust only in his promises and act according to his plans. That is how various ideologies operate. They destroy or deconstruct all differences so that they can reign unopposed. To do so, however, they need young people who have no use for history, who spurn the spiritual and human riches inherited from past generations, and are ignorant of everything that came before them. In order to grasp reality, it must be approached from a diachronic perspective, whereas the prevailing tendency is to see things from a flattened, synchronic point of view, a present without a past. The avoidance of history very often appears as a form of blindness that drives us to waste our energies on a world that does not exist, raising false problems and veering towards inadequate solutions. Some of these interpretations may prove useful to small groups, but certainly not to humanity and the Christian community as a whole. Hence, the urgent need for a greater sense of history at a moment when we see a tendency to dismiss the memory of the past or to invent one suited to the requirements of dominant ideologies. Faced with the cancellation of past history or with clearly biased historical narratives, the work of historians, together with knowledge and dissemination of their work, can act as a curb on misrepresentations, partisan efforts at revisionism, and their use to justify wars, persecutions, the production, sale, and utilization of weapons, and any number of other evils. Nowadays, we are flooded with so-called memories, often false, artificial, and even mendacious, and at the same time an absence of history and historical awareness in civil society and even in our Christian communities. Matters become even worse if we think of carefully and covertly prefabricated histories that serve to construct ad hoc memories, identity-based memories, and exclusionary memories. The work of historians and knowledge of their findings are of decisive importance today and can serve as an antidote to this lethal regime of hatred that rests on ignorance and prejudice. On the other hand, an in-depth participatory knowledge of history makes clear that we can come to grips with the past by hasty interpretations disconnected from their consequences. Reality, past or present, is never a simple phenomenon, reducible to naive and dangerous simplifications, much less to the attempts of those who believe they are like perfect and omnipotent gods and want to cancel part of history and humanity. There may well be horrific moments and atrocious individuals in humanity, but if judgments are made primarily through mass communication and social media, or on the basis of purely political interest, we can be subject to an irrational rush of anger or emotion. In the end, as the saying goes, facts taken out of context can only serve as a pretext. This is where the study of history comes to our aid. Historians can contribute to the understanding of complexity through the rigorous method they employ in interpreting the past, an understanding that is indispensable for transforming the present world and transcending ideological distortions.